last county general we got is still valid, I assume? Okay. Yeah. We, on our last meeting, we were discussing how to divvy up different funds, and we got some discussion, and the director of schools is here, and we got one of the school board members there also. How are y'all's meetings coming?
Oh, we're ready to begin.
Okay.
Oh, you weren't in the commission meeting today?
No. Well, I need me a copy of that.
I brought extra copies if you need. May I come to the table?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I was expecting. And bring me a copy. I'll give Jim his back. Yeah, and everybody else that does. Everybody got a copy? Brent don't have a copy.
The dog didn't eat mine.
Yes. May I sit here?
You may. You go right into y'all's then, and then we'll ask questions as we go along, but
That's fine.
probably most questions will be at the end. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I did watch the video of the last meeting, and I know that you all had asked for me to be here at the last meeting. So I have my email correspondence, because I know it was on Facebook that I didn't see it was prudent to come, but I did say that I would attend, and that Diane had gotten with Mark, and I was told to don't worry about coming. So I didn't come, so I want y'all to know I'm not trying to hold y'all up or anything. But in fact, we got 2 or 3 meetings going on tonight, so supposed to be attending. But so I just wanted to know, and I had proof of that I
That's
wasn't
fine.
just playing hooky. I wanted you to know that. So I gave this to the commissioners at the last commissioners meeting, and this is a budget based on the 88 cents of a tax rate, just like we have gotten the past few years. And I know what some of the discussion is going to be tonight, but so basically the first couple of pages and a half are the revenue. We're not seeing a big increase in any of the revenue there. Except in the BEP, there is an increase, and let me explain that. We're getting a little bit of increase this year because of the governor's initiative to put 200 million or billion into education. Cannon County benefited a little bit from that, mainly in the fact that we have always paid 12 months of the employee's insurance, or a portion of that. We have never been reimbursed for 12 months until this coming year. So most of that money that you see there, the $136,000, or $135,000, is for that insurance, that 12th month of insurance increase. We got a
gonna
little
continue to
bit
do
of
that?
technology money. Yes, sir.
The state gonna continue to do that?
I have asked if this is permanent or temporary, and it's supposed to be permanent. So, but what you will find if you saw our worksheets, and I know that Commissioner Brent Bush came and talked to me last year or year before, wanting to know about how we do our budget, and that was another concern, that we do not get our allocation letter. We get an allocation letter that explains what we're going to get, what our funding is based on, in April, May, June, and July. So we've gotten 3 of those. We did not get the April allocation letter until the 22nd of April. We had a school board meeting that right after, the next 2 or 3 days after that, but within 10 days we were working on putting a state allocation into our budget. So we have been working on it. We haven't waited till the last minute. We worked on it a lot longer than when we got the allocation letter, but that gave us some figures. One thing that's concerning to me that I think you ought to know is that with the change in funding, and you all know that in Kenton County, we have a lot of schools. We have several small schools. And we have been through this discussion many times in the past. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have been through public forums at least twice. And both times, it was community-wide, county-wide, that they want to keep the schools that they have. They want to keep the K-8 configuration. They want to keep their community schools. So, yes, that's a little more expensive. But when you divide students, and that's how we get our funding, it's based on a certain population, they put all the students in one category as if they're all in one school. So we have 166 teachers now. We have cut about 9 teachers in the last 20 years. But we also have lost funding for some teachers. We may have cut in the K-8 sector. We've added in the high school sector because I know that there's always been a push for more CTE. So just to give you an example, there are 9 we used to call it vocational, it's now called CTE, teachers at the high school. We get funded for 5. So that extra, those extra teachers have to come out of our budget somehow. But that's public demand. No, that's just for the high school.
Just for the high school.
And that's your business programs, your ag programs, your carpentry, your health occupations, what used to be home ec, family and consumer science is what it's called now. But we have 9 teachers for that. We are now only funded for 124 teachers in our budget out of 166. So that's 42 teachers that we have above and beyond what BEP funds us. But BEP, which is Basic Education Program, and keep in mind that first word, it is the basic amount. They only give us $44,430 for a teacher. And that sounds like a lot. But basically, a teacher with all the benefits is going to cost us between $50,000 and $60,000. And that's just a beginning teacher, and then it can go up from there. So, I know that there's been discussion about losing students, and I have that proof that we have lost students. I know what the discussion has been. I know y'all wanted to tell me, but I heard it on the street and everywhere else about cutting 300 or 200,000. We would have to lose just for the 2.5 that you think about that you're giving us in the taxes here. This first page, basically. We would have to cut 189 students to get down to this number. I know Mr. Brent Bush has mentioned this 2.82 number. Let me explain that number. This is our baseline. If we even lost 250 students, and you multiplied that times your county per pupil expenditure, you still couldn't go below this 2.82 figure. It's 2,280,000 in the June estimate. It was a little higher in another estimate, but in the June estimate is what we have to go by. So to meet the 2,280,000, we'd have to cut 189 students. But we haven't cut that many students. We've lost 45 students based upon the last time they took a census. Now in July, that may go up because in the April estimate, it only showed us dropping 40 students. Now it's showing us dropping 45 students. So even if we lost 250 students, you still couldn't go below that mark. Your maintenance of effort is based upon what you budgeted last year. And we go from there for this year. And then next year's maintenance of budget will be based upon what you budget in the 16-17 So you can't
I don't
completely
even
drop.
follow logic. You're saying that we can never cut you then, what you just said.
I'm just saying that you can't cut down to this number because we've lost 45 students. It would take a whole lot of students to get down to that number. But even if we lost, which was 189 students, but even if we lost more than 189 students, then you still couldn't go below that number. That's your baseline. And we actually have not been below that baseline since 2010. And those of you who were on the commission now, I know Mr. Barker was, and it might Mr. Jim Bush may have been, that I had to come back and ask for $40,000. I don't know if you remember that, but I think 09-10 was the year that we were cut 4 cents, or for the 10-11, and the state didn't approve our budget, so we had to come back and ask for 2 cents to meet that. And that has put us over this 2.280 since 2010. But I just wanted you to know,
Is that-
maintenance of effort is based on last year's budgeted amount. Okay.
So, does it ever drop?
Well, I hate to tell you that you can cut a little.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
Is that 2,280,000, is that what would be in this line right here?
That line right there, but it actually, all of this. We have to put this TVA revenue sharing in there as well. Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
But some of these things you don't have control over, like sales tax and
That's right.
TVA revenue sharing and payment in lieu of taxes, the local utilities. I think there's a mandated school portion of those amounts. So basically, the one that you do have control over is that first one, 40100 county property.
You know, I think everybody on the commission and everybody on the school board both realize, actually been on there just a little while, that we don't have much control over anything. The control's in Nashville. Whether it's the Department of Education.
Well, I think we do have some more. I think we have more control than you realize.
We have to do what they require, and then we have control over how to do it. But
Right.
Well, the school board has some control too with the amount
Some.
of schools
That's
that
true.
they have to fund and maintain.
Well, the only thing I would say is your baseline is $100,000 different than what my baseline is. That's the document I found. You say 2.28 million is the local
This is our
contribution.
June estimate. Here's your total required local matching funds.
Right, well, the document I had was 2.186 is what the state said, so we're $100,000 different.
And let me see if that's what April
Which
said.
would still, if you even did the math, and I took we're still giving you $15,000 extra.
Even in April, it was 2.281. The 2.186 was last year's required local matching.
So BEP up, BEP went
The
up.
required local matching
Even
went
though
up.
Senate pop went down, which we agree on that, you're saying BEP went up?
Your required
Yeah,
match
your
went up.
went up.
Yeah.
Now, why would that be?
It all goes back to these that you know better than I do about how they fund with the TASER and the CBER ratios. The county's ability to pay is what that's based on. And so it's the fiscal capacity. So this was last year's and this is this year's. It's over 2.28. Okay?
Well, I just
So-
wanted you to see, because that's what I just basically did, is I went 2.541 from 2.186, and that gives you 355.5. Then you subtract, I give you credit for $250,000 that you put in for school debt. I subtracted that from 350 to give you 105, but the end, it ends up with that right there is equals the property tax rate, 5 cents. My point is, I mean, the math is pretty good. If you add 2.80, which you said, that's $100,000. That's exactly where I'm at. That's 105. So, I mean, I understand that you're looking at a little different number than what I had as a difference. The challenge has to do, though, again, is the student population across the county. And I understand it's important to keep our communities together, but you can see why some counties are forced to consolidate schools. I mean, we've consolidated schools in this county once before.
Before that.
So we did it then.
And that's why I wanted to start with that, because I think I said about 5 years ago that
So
we
you're
had
saying it
those
would be,
middle school forums,
but
that
it would
it
be
was,
cheaper, so it would be
it was
cheaper to run,
again,
would it be cheaper to run a middle school?
no,
Or
because you're
junior
gonna have to
Or
build a
junior
middle
high.
school, and then you're going to, and what are you gonna do with all the other students? So you may have an increase in transportation, combining schools, you may or may not lose teachers because of the pupil to teacher ratio. Remember, those are very low now. In K4, it's 20. I mean, K3, it's 20 to a teacher, and 4, 5, and 6, it's 25. 7 and 8, it's 30. High school, it's 35, which it's always been. But, you know, you have a smaller ratio. When all of us went to school, probably,
No,
I don't know about Jamie, but the ratio could have been 40 to 1. I mean, my first grade class had 42 students in it. I went back and counted one day. But we can't do that anymore. That would be 3 classes now with 42 students.
The second question I got is that if we're sitting here at 88 cents local contribution property tax rate, and then you went to a different number, you brought a requirement, you increased the BEP to 2.80, wouldn't you ask, what that did, well, shouldn't you ask us for a nickel
No.
to say it's same funding? That's $100,000 more.
Well, I should probably, but I did last year, and we did. I asked for 2 cents, and we didn't get it. So this year, the board decided to not ask because we knew that that wasn't going to probably happen. But what happens is that we're using our fund balance to balance the budget, which is always a bad practice. That's always a bad practice.
To use our fund balance for things that we might not share. I'd rather give you a nickel
Well, that's good.
based on BEP,
Okay.
now that we have new baseline.
Can you take questions from the field?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Garber just recently talked about how so much of it is out of your control. Yet you decided to keep an extra 46 teachers. And how is that, I guess the reason that I think a lot of citizens are here poking their finger in the chest is because we're not seeing things come out of the schools that we are expecting from the tax money that we're paying. Schools aren't credited. There's some other things that maybe there's too many teachers, schools are open when there's not very many students in them. There's a lot of, maybe these are rumors, but there's a lot of things that we don't feel like you're answering. And if you're telling me that you don't have control because the board tells you, Nashville tells you, that you're keeping an extra 46 teachers, and then you're saying you're paying them $46,000, $44,000, but then you're saying the benefits are going to cost an extra $14,000 or $15,000 per student or per teacher, but that's not counting the $128,000 you talked about at the first that you decided you're going to pay for out of your own pocket. So I guess I'd just like you to clear up some of these.
Okay.
numbers.
Well, let me address the accreditation because I've addressed that at the county commission a couple of times. Our schools are accredited with the state of Tennessee. We offer every course that we have to offer, that's supposed to be offered, plus some. We are not SACS accredited. That's not even an organization anymore. That organization is called Advanced Ed out of Georgia. We are not accredited through a private institution. So when we were accredited, first of all schools couldn't be accredited because they didn't all have 250 students. So we didn't have every school in our county accredited in the first place by that private institution. So what that private institution does, it comes in and it makes recommendations for improvement. You spend hours putting together a big book, it's this thick, what your community's like, your demographics, what you offer, and then they make recommendations. But none of that was binding. It was
Is that
just
a choice that the board has made to not have them come in and do, is that correct?
yes,
Is that a
because
saving?
it is a peer review and we are meeting all the state mandates. That costs a few $1,000s per school to do that. The schools have asked us to not have to go through that process because it's a lot of paperwork just for a peer review, for that certificate to hang on the wall. It doesn't mean that they're not getting into any of the colleges. We have students who went to Vanderbilt, who went to every school in the state of Tennessee, and even some out of the state. Last year, they're getting all kinds of scholarships. It has nothing to do with any of that. Our students are accredited through the state of Tennessee. We meet all those proper guidelines.
What percentage of your students that graduated out of high school here are actually attending college?
We had 58% last year,
And
which is
how many
really
are continuing
up.
to their second year?
Pardon me?
How many are there continuing to their second year?
I don't have that data, but I can get that for you. But Tennessee Promise helped out a lot with that free tuition to a Tennessee College of Applied Technology or to a two-year institution. So they really helped. We really pushed that. We had 95% to go almost through the whole process of getting into a college. And then we, went down to 80%. There's a lot to get that Tennessee Promise money. And we ended up with 58%. So that was even above the governor's drive of 55%. So we felt really good when for 50 years we had 30 to 35% of our students going to college, and now we have 58%. That's great. So we're pushing it every year. And not just college, post-secondary. It can be a TCAT or a college.
Do you track the remediation numbers? How many kids have to take remedial classes to graduate?
We did, we have in the past. Now, I don't have those figures for this past year, but I can get you that and give that in my report in one of the
that would have-
monthly meetings that I have to do.
Those kind of numbers would help you
Right.
make sure we're setting the right
Right.
curriculum.
But as far as our students graduating with a valid diploma, meeting all state requirements, we have the state testing, we have the graduation rate we have to meet, we have a dropout cohort. We are meeting all of those guidelines, and every year the state sets a target of proficient and advanced that we have to meet, and we have our guidelines there. So the principals actually came to me and asked me about not having to go through that review process because that was taking a week or two out of their schedule, their instructional schedule, to do that process. And then at the end of that, the recommendation may have been an awning over the back door or sidewalks to the bus stop or something like that, something that we probably could have seen ourselves and would have done eventually ourselves. None of those requirements were mandatory. They were all just recommendations. So I don't know if you've researched, but I know that none of the new schools in Rutherford County have gone through the private accreditation process, and they're on track that all of the schools who are now in the old SACS accreditation process, as soon as that expires, they're not going to renew that. So it's kind of a status symbol, but I know that's caused a lot of talk in this county. Our schools are not subpar. They just don't have that peer review certificate hanging on the wall. But the high school is actually through 2017.
Is this not a private, I mean, accreditation isn't a private?
It's a private company.
Profit,
It is for profit, right?
right, I mean, so, it's like you say, do we actually do that? Do we actually,
Right.
I don't see that we actually do that.
You know, our principals feel like they're meeting all the guidelines that the State Department of Education has put out. And we're meeting all the diploma project guidelines. So why do we need that extra peer review? That's what they were saying. And so we took that to the board. At first, the board approved a few years ago for me to look into district accreditation. And that way we would do it one time and we would be able to get all schools. But that process changed as well. Not only did we have to go through that at the central office level, but every school had to do the same thing. So even those smaller schools who had never been through it was still going to have to make the big book of all the information that the advanced ed was going to require. So then last year, with the recommendation again of the principals of the schools, I took it back to the board and it was voted to not go through that process because it did take away from instructional time.
What got my interest perked up here as far as, you know, the state with the 2-year technical or junior colleges? And you said you had 45 that started the process.
95.
95 that started the process. And you said it was a tough curriculum to get in.
It's they have to attend meetings.
Right.
They have to fill out the FAFSA, which is for grants and scholarships, and
Right.
and so just getting them to meet the requirements that Tennessee Promise requires of them, and they're each assigned a mentor. I mean, last year I had 10. All of mine went, but 7 of them went on a different type of scholarship to a 4-year university. This year I have 5, and one of them went to Austin Peay on a 4-year scholarship. So, I mean, I feel like we're reaching them, and they are assigned a mentor. They have to do 8 hours of community service per semester, and they have to keep that. They have to continue that community service every semester that they get the Tennessee Promise. So, I mean, it's good. That's why I was offering, when you all had about the walking trail, that I said, I can get you workers. You know, they've got to have 8 hours of community service, so I could get the workers for that if y'all got the grant for that. So, you know, we're doing everything we can, but there has to be that parent commitment and that student commitment to do their part. We can push and we can let them know, but they have to continue.
Will you address the extra teachers?
Pardon me?
I talked to you.
What I was saying is on the teachers that the state provides a basic salary in our BEP. They don't pay. I mean, we have teachers making $60,000 salary, or or better. So that $44,000 is not paying for them. So what we get per teacher doesn't pay for all the teacher salary in the BEP. It just pays for a part of it. And then as far as why we have extra teachers is because we have a teacher per grade level in all of our schools in the K-8s. So we have a pre-K, we have 4 pre-Ks, we have a teacher in every one of those. Those are all provided by a grant. We have a kindergarten through 8th grade teacher for every grade level in every school. Now there have been some years where we have combined, but what I found there, like you can't combine kindergarten and half of first and then put half of first with 2nd grade. You can't split grades anymore. But you can combine all of kindergarten and 1st grade in the classroom as long as there are 20 or fewer students. So I've done that a few times. But what happens is those teachers have not taught double classes. You know, the teachers I had, they were used to teaching split classes, teaching 2 grade levels in the classroom. We got away from that for so long that I'm finding that that's a problem. And then there are so many standards that they feel like they're not giving justice. They're one grade level over the other. You know, they might suffer. So if they can just concentrate on kindergarten, we'll have a better group of kindergartners coming out, better prepared. If they concentrate on 1st grade, they'll have a better 1st grade coming out, going into 2nd, better prepared. So that's another reason, but because we have all those schools that the communities have said they've always wanted. And I've told the commission if it's all about closing schools, I want somebody to tell me which school to close, because that is not going to be a happy decision anywhere. And I would really, I really fight for those schools because, as you would expect, your smaller schools should be your higher performing, and a lot of times they are.
They are. But like, your problem is that you've got different student populations per grade level throughout the county.
Right.
So you've got, let's just use an example, you've got 25 3rd graders at Camden County. You may have 2, or at Woodbury, you may have 2 3rd grade classes. Then you've got 8 at Short Mountain. 8 students,
Could
in
have.
third, right. So that's where the state kind of, that's where you end up with the problem, the distribution, based on what the state allows you to do. Now, if we're, as a local community, willing to pay and keep the status quo, then all for it. What I've heard is that, I think, Diane, how much do we owe the schools? What was your last number you give us? Did you say from the wheel tax over at $1,015,000? So if you say $1 million is we owe y'all for a decade of spending wheel tax money, and then what you just told me, essentially what I think, to maintain status quo, that's a nickel, that's 55 cents of property tax. We need it raised right now this year.
Well, let's make it clear, you all don't owe the schools
Well, the debt
that
service,
money.
the debt
You owe
service.
debt service
the school's
because
debt
the county
service. But that's
executive's
the-
office took over the debt service when we had the building program, and the school system actually contributes $250,000 to that every year.
So can we get away with not paying that?
I don't know what the auditor's gonna tell you about that.
Oh, I'm asking. I get-
I'm just saying, I don't want you to say that comes to
Yeah, I
the
wanna-
schools
I wanna
because
buy.
it doesn't.
It's the new debt service.
Yeah, it's the new
Yeah,
debt service.
It
That's-
doesn't come to the schools. We don't handle that. In fact, we don't handle any money. The trustee handles all of our money. But the debt service is what I'm thinking you're saying, that you use money from the wheel tax and from the $250,000 that we contributed every year. It didn't all go to the building fund debt. It went to other things, and so now y'all are saying y'all have to pay that back. But
I'm
that
not
is
saying
not.
that. I'm
Yeah,
saying
you're guessing. I don't know if you've been told that, but anyway, that doesn't come to us and
told?
doesn't affect our budget at all.
we've been told.
Yeah, and y'all haven't,
But
it
not all
doesn't
at one
affect
time.
our budget.
We're not sure about.
We're not sure about
the glide path on how long we're gonna take.
I'm gonna entertain one more question from the audience. I'm gonna entertain one more question from the audience, but the committee here has asked me to limit that because you can ask questions of your school board member, your commissioner, the director of schools, or whoever, after we adjourn. Go ahead, Paul.
What's your annual maintenance cost for all the schools that we have? I'm not privy to any of the information.
Maintenance budget,
What's your maintenance cost for all the schools that you have?
okay, that's a separate category in our budget. And this does not include custodians. It's $263,000 for maintenance only.
How many custodians do you have per
Now,
school?
that has nothing to do with custodians. In the custodial department where we have, but we also, that figure that I'm going to give you here under operation of plant includes the custodians, all their benefits for their salary, electricity, natural gas, water and sewer, boiler insurance, and that sort of thing. And that's a little over $1 million. So as far as how many custodians we have one per school for the smaller schools like Auburn, Short Mountain, and Eastside. We have 2 at Westside, Woodland, and Woodbury. We call those the W schools. And we have 3 at the high school.
Does that include mowing the grounds
No, that's a contracted service.
through the school or through the county?
No, through the school system.
And the figures for that?
Well, that's about $12,000. We bid that out every 2 years
That's bid out every 2 years, right?
for a mowing is.
Okay. Any question for Director
Probably
of
just,
Schools?
probably just a comment, because, I mean, I've sat on this committee for many years. Every year we get into schools, that Tennessee says we're gonna pay you for X number, and we're, in this case, 42, 46 over what Tennessee's paying us. And I know you said you did the forms in the past, in the outcry, whatever. Well, as we, within this budget committee, when it's been dealing with county government and funding and expenses, we've tried to look at bare bones, what it takes to make it work. And if you're, it's just like, where we've had the 2 referendums, or 3 referendums, whatever, to raise sales tax by 1%, to do the wheel tax. People don't want to pay more, but they still want more. They still want these schools in each one of the communities. And I understand it. I don't have any children. I don't, kind of back to last week, we was talking about the use of the landfill, and maybe we shouldn't charge the landfill, or people much to go to the landfill if they don't dump that much garbage. Well, I don't have any children, so maybe I shouldn't pay for education. That's not what I'm going from. But I think when it comes down to it, to me, school system is a business. It has to be looked at in a business model. And if we're spending 42 for teachers, more than, and I know 42, we're not over 42 exactly, because I know that's one building, X students is the way it's calculated. But still, we're overspending, at least 20 teachers more than what we should be doing in this county. And at some point, that action has got to be taken and saying, this is what we do. And if the public still wants it, then it comes back like Brent said, okay, it's another 50 cents, because of schools. So I think that part has got to happen, whether it happens this year, next year, 3 years from now, whatever, it's got to happen, because it's wasting money.
Well, and that's why I said we are absorbing that in our budget. We have not asked you for anything other than what we got last year.
Well,
And
but
you
it's
know
still,
that the penny went down a little bit last year.
Still got the 88 cents in property
And then-
tax. If it wasn't there, if that
Yeah.
money wasn't there, that number would be lower way back, not.
And so that goes back to what Mr. Brent asked me about, what can you reduce? So I know that Mr. Gannon has called Mary Ann Dursky, who is our state financial director, or Mr. Corley has, and that they've told you that you can reduce, and there's a minimal amount, and I'm going to give you that because I did my homework. I knew y'all were going to ask for that. But basically, the county contributes $1,483 a student. The state contributes $6,922 a student to educate in Cannon County.
What's that number again?
$1,483. So if we go by the June estimate and we have lost, and I would never ask you to reduce my budget, but I'm going to be honest with you, I've never lied to you about it. If you had 45 students fewer in the tabulation, then you're looking at $66,735 that you could cut. So basically 3 cents you could cut. Now, I don't, that would get you through this year, 3 cents, but I don't know what next year would bring. I always say that, so that's why we always ask for whatever, the amount that we received the year before. Only twice, I think, have I ever asked for an increase, and once was last year because the board asked me to. But I knew that probably would not happen.
But by doing that, we're still over. We're still paying for 30 teachers that we shouldn't be paying.